it's time for RTB 101, where we discuss practical questions to equip you to share your faith more effectively. And here to help me talk about a very foundational question to our faith is theologian and philosopher Kenneth Samples. Welcome, Ken.
Hello, Krista.
You know, I've been collecting some letters recently from social media, and I have one that I thought maybe we could talk about today. This one is from Reverend Jim, and he asks, what is the biblical evidence that Adam and Eve were specially created? And if special, or were they maybe specially selected from an existing hominoid group? And what does it mean to be created in the image of God? So I thought maybe we could break Reverend Jim's question down into a few pieces. Maybe let's start with the biblical evidence that Adam and Eve were specially created. Are there any specific verses that you could point us to?
Yeah, I think a very important verse, Krista, in the context of how Adam was created, rests there in Genesis 2:7. It says that the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and the breath of life. And I would say a couple things about that. I would say, one, I think it's reasonable to conclude then that humans are a mind-body dualism, just basic idea there. But I also think that that passage gives support for special creation over any kind of evolutionary creation. And what I mean by that is, as you read the passage, it appears that the creation of Adam moves from the inanimate, non-life, dust of the ground, to the breath of life, and then to a living being. So exegetically, I think you can draw support from that passage that that is a special creation. I think from an evolutionary point of view, at least textually, we would expect it to go from animate, some kind of bipedal primate maybe, a possible ape, for example, ancestor of human beings, to animate. So I think that is a passage that I think exegetically supports an intervention of creation from inanimate to animate, and thus a special creation.
That's a really good picture there, because as God intervenes quite directly, seems to be the picture that we get there in Genesis chapter 2. And another thing I'm noticing here in the passage is that it says that God formed the man from the dust of the ground, which it says something similar to that later in chapter 2 about the animals. But what's different about the human is that he gives him the breath of life. So it's like, what that tells me is maybe there's similarities and differences between humans and animals.
Yeah, I agree. I think that since animals were also made from the dust of the ground, but they don't have the breath of life, they don't have the imago Dei, there's going to be both similarities and differences. There's going to be, anatomical, maybe physical characteristics that are similar, but we should also see some kind of profound sense of kind, or what we might call human exceptionalism.
That's really helpful. And I'm also thinking, you mentioned there the imago Dei, that means image of God in Latin. Right. And that's kind of how, from what I understand, the humans were created in chapter 1 of Genesis, that they're created in the image of God. Are there any scriptures that maybe give some specifics or give us insight into what that phraseology means?
Yeah, there is only a limited number of explicit passages. I think about a half a dozen that talk specifically about human beings made in the image and likeness of God, but they're critical passages. You referenced Genesis 1:26 through 28, made in the image of God, the likeness of God. I see image and likeness as being Hebrew parallelism, so they're the same thing. Male and female. And there are references in Genesis that talk about the value of human life, the dignity of human beings in the context of murder, for example. To attack a human life is to attack the Creator. And even James in the New Testament talks about using slurs against people is a violation of the Imago Dei. Now, what it means is a very important question. And I think, to be fair, Krista, not all Christians agree. There's kind of three basic views with some qualifications. I would call them, for example, and they are given different names: a resemblance view, a relational view, and a representative view. I see those as kind of the three definitions of the image of God.
So when we think about similarities and differences between humans and animals, are we qualitatively different than animals, or are we just on the spectrum of animals? We're at one end of that spectrum. How do we think about that?
Yeah, I think that this is a very important question. And in philosophy, we talk about differences of degree and differences of kind. I think if we were to adopt an evolutionary perspective, we would likely think that there will only be a difference in kind. Only a different in degree. I think that would be a Darwinian perspective. But I think from a biblical point of view, it's going to be a difference in kind. It is not just something more, but it is something that is distinct. And if we resemble God, for example, we're spiritual creatures, we're uniquely intellectual, volitional. I think if that is the case, then because of our spirituality, because of our capacity to engage in intellectual moral questions, I think that would clearly put us in a difference of kind, which would involve what many scientists call, again, human exceptionalism.
Very good. This has been a helpful discussion, and we want to thank our friend Reverend Jim, whoever he is, for writing into the show with this very thoughtful question. And thank you, Ken, for your very helpful answer. And I want to encourage all our viewers to go check out Ken's blog. It's called Reflections, and you can search for that at reasons.org.